I was standing in a small hotel room surrounded by flowers, garment bags, makeup brushes, and nervous bridesmaids. My wedding dress hung beside the window. Sunlight spilled across the white fabric, making the room look almost unreal. I had imagined this morning since I was a little girl. I imagined my mother helping me button the dress. I imagined her fixing my veil. I imagined her crying when she saw me. Instead, she was somewhere on a beach. I dialed her number anyway. She answered after 3 rings. "Hello, Mom." There was music in the background. Laughter. Then I heard someone say, "Another round." My mother laughed. I smiled despite myself. "Where are you?" "Vacation." I closed my eyes. "Today?" "Yes, today." There was a pause. Then she laughed again. A trip sounded more fun. My smile disappeared. I had known she might not come. She had been complaining about my wedding for months. She hated the venue. She disliked my fiancé, Ethan. She thought the guest list was too small. She thought my dress was too simple. But some tiny part of me had believed that when the day actually arrived, she would choose me. Apparently, I was wrong. "Mom," I whispered, "I'm getting married today." "I know. You're really not coming?" She sighed. "Claire, don't start." "Start what?" "This guilt thing." I stared at myself in the mirror. My makeup was finished. My hair was curled. But suddenly, I felt like a little girl again. The little girl who used to stand at the front door waiting for her mother to come home. "I just wanted you here," I said. There was silence. Then she said, "You'll be fine." I swallowed. "Okay. Have fun." She hung up. I stood there holding the phone. One of my bridesmaids, Rachel, had heard everything. She slowly walked toward me. "Claire." I shook my head. "Don't." "But I don't want to cry." Rachel hugged me anyway. That was when I finally broke. I cried into her shoulder. Not because my mother wasn't at my wedding. Because somewhere deep inside, I realized she hadn't been coming for years. She had simply been physically present sometimes. Emotionally, she had always been somewhere else. My name is Claire Morgan, and for 29 years, I had tried to earn my mother's approval. When I got excellent grades, she asked why they weren't perfect. When I got promoted, she asked whether the position paid enough. When I bought my first apartment, she complained about the neighborhood. When I met Ethan, she asked what his family did. When I told her I loved him, she asked what he owned. Ethan wasn't wealthy. He didn't have a luxury car. He didn't come from an influential family. He worked as a civil engineer. He was patient, thoughtful, and kind. He remembered little things. Like how I hated raisins. How I got nervous before presentations. How I always forgot to charge my phone. He didn't buy me expensive gifts. He showed up. That was what my mother couldn't understand. When Ethan proposed, my mother didn't congratulate me. She looked at the ring and said, "How much did he spend?" I laughed because I thought she was joking. She wasn't. "Aren't you happy for me?" "I'm concerned." "About what?" "Your future." "My future is Ethan." She sighed. "You're making an emotional decision." I looked at her. Isn't marriage supposed to involve emotion? Not only emotion. She wanted me to marry someone rich. Someone connected. Someone who could provide the lifestyle she believed I deserved. She even introduced me to a wealthy businessman named Andrew. He was polite, successful, and completely wrong for me. When I told my mother I wasn't interested, she exploded. "You're throwing away an opportunity." "No," I said. "I'm choosing someone I love." She shook her head. "You'll regret it." Then came the wedding planning. She tried to take over everything. She wanted a huge ballroom. I wanted a garden. She wanted 500 guests. I wanted 80. She wanted an expensive designer gown. I wanted the dress I'd chosen because it made me feel like myself. Every decision became an argument. Eventually, she stopped speaking to me. 3 weeks before the wedding, she sent a message. "I'm not attending." I replied. "Why?" She answered, "Because I don't support this marriage." I stared at the screen for a long time. Then I wrote, "I hope someday you will." She didn't reply. Now it was my wedding day, and she was on vacation. I wiped my tears. Rachel helped me fix my makeup. "Are you ready?" I looked at myself in the mirror. "No." She smiled. "You don't have to be." I took a breath. "But I'm going." Downstairs, Ethan was waiting. When he saw me, his face changed. He didn't look at the dress first. He looked at me. "You're beautiful." I smiled. "Thank you." He noticed my eyes. "Did something happen?" I nodded. "My mom isn't coming." His expression softened. He stepped closer. "I'm sorry. I thought she'd change her mind." "I know." I called her. "What did she say?" I hesitated. She laughed. Ethan looked angry for a moment. But then he simply took my hand. Then let's make today about the people who chose to be here. I nodded. You're right. The ceremony began. My father walked me down the aisle. He had always been quieter than my mother. But when we reached Ethan, Dad squeezed my hand. You're sure? I smiled. More sure than I've ever been. He kissed my forehead. Then I'm happy. Ethan took my hands. His eyes filled with tears. I don't promise you a perfect life, he said. I don't need one. I promise I'll never make you feel like you're competing for my attention. My throat tightened. I promised the same. We exchanged rings. We said our vows. And when we kissed, everyone applauded. Everyone except my mother. But strangely, I didn't feel empty anymore. I felt free. The reception was small. There was music, dancing, laughter. My father gave a speech. He raised his glass. To Claire and Ethan. Everyone cheered. Then Dad paused. My daughter has spent much of her life trying to make people proud of her. He looked directly at me. Today, I want her to know she doesn't have to do that anymore. I started crying. He continued. She only has to live a life that makes her proud. Everyone applauded. I looked at Ethan. He squeezed my hand. For the first time, I understood something. A wedding isn't about who refuses to show up. It's about who stands beside you when they could be somewhere else. Later that night, as everyone danced, my phone buzzed. It was my mother. I stared at the screen. Ethan noticed. You don't have to answer. I looked at the message. Hope everything went well. Sorry I missed it. The trip was wonderful. I read it twice. Then I typed. It did go well. I wish you had been here. I almost sent it. Then I stopped. I deleted the message. Instead, I wrote, Thank you. I had a beautiful day. I sent it. Then I put my phone away. I didn't need her approval anymore. But I didn't know that the next morning, my mother would call me crying. And this time, she wouldn't be laughing. Because while I was walking down the aisle, she had received a letter from my grandmother. A letter that revealed the real reason my mother had spent years trying to control my life, and why she had suddenly chosen a vacation over her daughter's wedding after the wedding. I thought the hardest part would be learning to live with my mother's absence. Instead, the hardest part was learning not to measure my happiness by her reaction to it. For most of my life, whenever something good happened, my first instinct had been to call her. When I got my first promotion, I called Mom. When Ethan proposed, I called Mom. When we bought our first house, I called Mom. Even when I was sick, I called Mom. But after the wedding, I started asking myself a different question. What do I think about this? It sounds simple. It wasn't. I had spent years waiting for someone else to tell me whether I had made the right decision. Now I had to trust myself. Ethan noticed the change. One evening, we sat on the porch of our new house. The sunset painted the sky orange. I was holding the letter from Grandma. I keep reading this, I said. Ethan smiled. Why? Because every time I read it, I notice something different. He looked at me. What did you notice tonight? I pointed to one sentence. Your life is not a debt you owe anyone. Ethan nodded. That sounds like her. She was always like that. Then maybe she knew you needed to hear it. I smiled. I think she did. I had also started looking into the trust my grandmother left me. The money was real. The legal documents were real. And my mother had indeed been managing it for years. But there was something else. A second account. My grandmother had created it specifically for education and community projects. There was enough money to make a serious difference. I remembered something she had told me when I was a teenager. Money should never make you feel bigger than someone else. At the time, I hadn't understood. Now I did. So I decided not to use the money to prove anything to my mother. I didn't buy an expensive car. I didn't purchase a mansion. I didn't post pictures online. Instead, I started a scholarship program in my grandmother's name. The first recipient was a 19-year-old girl named Maya. She had been accepted into an engineering program, but couldn't afford the tuition. When I called her, she thought it was a mistake. You're serious? Yes. But why me? Because someone once helped my family when we needed it. It wasn't entirely true, but it was what Grandma would have wanted me to say. The scholarship grew. Then another. Then another. Within a year, dozens of young people had received help. And strangely, that brought me more happiness than anything I could have purchased. My mother eventually found out. She called me one afternoon. I heard what you're doing. Yes. Your grandmother would be proud. I smiled. I hope so. There was a pause. Then Mom said, I used to think wealth was about having enough so nobody could hurt you. I listened. Now I think maybe it's about having enough so you can help someone else. I didn't know what to say. That sounds like progress, I said. She laughed softly.